Hello and welcome to CEO Insights, the program that interviews chief executive officers and other top management people in companies operating here in Vietnam. I'm your host and my name is Leon Shears. And today I'm delighted to be able to invite Mr. Marc Townsend, Managing Director of CBRE Vietnam, one of the leading players in the real estate market both in Vietnam and in the region, and he tells me around the world. Marc, welcome. Thank you for giving us your time. And I will start very simply with the first question, if I may, and that is, where were you before and what was happening to you before you came into Vietnam?
I was working for Regis PLC in Singapore, and unfortunately the dot-com bubble burst and the serviced office industry went through a bad patch, and I found myself looking for new employment. I tried to stay in Singapore, but there wasn't much around at the time, 2001, 2002. So I got on my bike and started looking around other markets that I thought I'd find exciting, and I put together a plan with a couple of old colleagues from what was Rich Ellis, which had become CBRE, and we put together a business plan which CBRE corporate liked the idea of, and I ended up in about a week later in Vietnam. I took a taxi to my offices that I was sharing with Indochina, and as I got out of the taxi, drove off, and I lost both my suitcases on my first day. Luckily I had my passport in my pocket. To this day I still carry my passport in my right hand side. I had my laptop in my hand, and it was about 6 o'clock at night. It was raining hard, and I thought, gosh, what am I doing? But 12 years later, still here.
Good decision?
Excellent decision, yep. Found a lot of happiness here, and found it very rewarding, although obviously there have been a lot of road bumps.
And those road bumps consist of?
The market, and the inability to correct quickly.
Correct what?
The mechanism of maybe of oversupply, maybe interest rates when they get into double figures, let alone into the low 20s. Those are the sort of things that in markets like in Hong Kong and Singapore, the government moves very quickly to jump on, as you see with the stamp duties and the other things. But here, we've had it twice in the last, 6-7 years, and obviously a recovery takes a long time, a very natural, sort of almost Darwinian process.
But doesn't the real estate industry, you're part of it, actually weather that storm, because people need new homes, people need new offices and new factories, and so whether the market's on an up or a down, you still get your income, your commission? Or is that a fallacy that
it's a little
non-residential property people think?
It's a little bit of a fallacy. Obviously, property management, facilities management, and the commercial side of our business still carries on, but the number of valuations drop, the amount of research that we do for companies coming into the market drops, the amount of consultancy that we would be doing, and to be honest, most developers found it very difficult to develop, so their sales dried up. No one trusted the big developers, and certainly the buyers in a falling market realized that if they held on another 6 months or another year, they could buy the property of their dreams or whatever they were focusing on for 15% cheaper. So the residential side completely dried up, and the investment side of our business, selling what the media calls M&A, but what we would call disposals or acquisitions of income-producing assets, also dried up.
Right. And the situation now?
A lot better. We've got, I meet foreign groups practically every day, sometimes twice a day. They want to be briefed on the market, they want to know what the opportunities are. As I said, they're looking for service department buildings, hotels. They're looking for office buildings which may be trading at 8 or 9% yield, which in Hong Kong or Singapore would be 2 or 3%. So very attractive regionally, and all the big players are here at the moment. Mainly Asian companies, family office, as well as big government-linked companies from Singapore.
And The rise in serviced apartments, is it still on the rise? And has Vietnam yet reached the international level on that?
I think Vietnam has some good choices, and I quite like the very independent market. Obviously, they've got very high-end products managed by Frasers and Ascot, Somerset. The products managed by the Intercon. And now Lotte up in Hanoi. So they've got the very high end. They've got lots of medium end, which is a little bit old, some of it now, and there's lots of family-run businesses. So depending on the price point, there's quite a lot of solutions, available solutions for individuals. Bearing in mind that the old expat of our day with 2 Labradors and 3 40-foot containers is well gone, and most of the expatriates coming to Vietnam are either Korean, Japanese, Taiwanese, Indian, Malaysian, Filipino. They're here often for 3-6 months and then maybe renew for another 3 or 6 months. So actually the service apartment option is still very viable, and I think it'll have a lot of legs for another generation.
But my understanding is that the traditional expat package, which was huge salary, plus car, plus insurance, plus schooling, plus housing, made a real impact on the property market for rentals and forced them up. But there are less of those packages being offered now.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and the people that still have that are living in houses and villas in District 2, but the reality is that that's been replaced by a more sustainable, stronger market for mainly quality control, engineers, specialists, IT specialists, finance people that are coming to Vietnam for a project. I read in the paper this morning that there are 72,000 Koreans mainly working in manufacturing, and many of them will be looking for a service department solution because their company is not sure how long it's here for.
Did you write the article?
I didn't.
Because you are well publicised, aren't you?
I'm
I
sure
think the answer is yes.
We have a very good marketing team.
Yes, indeed. Because it's quite interesting talking to people. You talk real estate and your name always comes up, and you are the spokesperson for the industry.
Well, I hope that's a good thing. I think that after 12 years here, there's no point saying what people want to hear. You want to tell them how you think it is, and maybe that makes you a few friends, and maybe that makes you a few enemies. So I don't think my comments are always appreciated, but I think people maybe do listen to it.
Right, but truth is easy.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Living with the consequences might not necessarily.
Well, we've had a few times when my most favourite headline in one newspaper was CBRE staring down the barrel of a gun, because we were supposedly misquoting one developer. We actually had good evidence that our information was correct, but that's another story.
Okay, another day. And the trends in the market overall, and if you like, in 2 parts, residential and commercial?
At the beginning of the year, we thought that the big influx of mainland Chinese companies, developers, was going to start pushing rents up a bit. They have gone up maybe 3 to 5% since the beginning of the year, but nothing like as much as we thought, so we got that wrong.
Because of the China-Vietnam problem?
I think a series of issues. Maybe GDP didn't come back as much. Rents go up because people are taking more space and they're employing more people and winning more contracts. And if that's not happening, then rents stay flat, because obviously every quarter there's 1 or 2 new buildings. As we look across the skyline today, we can see 3 or 4 quite large projects that will be coming on. And some of the projects that have been brought to the market over the last 2 or 3 years actually haven't been fully leased yet. So for the developers and owners that own buildings that go back 10, 15 years, they're happy. They're sitting on a full order book. In fact, they've probably got a forward order book. If anyone decides to move, they can replace them quite easily. The problem is for developers that are bringing a new building on, they're having to give rent free. The situation in Ho Chi Minh is relatively in balance, but obviously in Hanoi, particularly in the Meding area, it's very much out of balance, out of kilter, and those developers are having to give 2, 3, in some cases as much as 6 months rent free. So we were half right in Ho Chi Minh, and obviously, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you're a tenant in Hanoi, you have lots of choice in very good buildings, brand new buildings, giving you different size footprint, floor plate, giving you different size amenities and facilities. The residential market has been, again, a slightly better story. The inventory that was overhanging certainly in District 2 and 7 has now been chewed through slightly quicker than people had originally anticipated. Some people were talking about an 8 to 10 year hangover. I think it's probably taken us 3 or 4 years to chew through it. And if you talk to the big Singaporean groups who took it on the nose, what should I say, on the chin, in terms of timing, they've now pretty much sold out their inventory and are able to move up their prices, and in some cases launch new projects, and in that launch period they've been able to push up the price 2 or 3%. So confidence is coming back. It's probably a reflection of other asset classes that may not be so attractive, gold, bank deposits, but obviously the stock market, one of the best performing in Southeast Asia last year, and again right up there this year, has taken a little bit, some of the shine off the real estate market. But mainly we're seeing, led by affordable projects, led by end users who are actually going to the bank and borrowing money in the form of a home loan, which we haven't really seen, and we didn't really see in 2006 and 7. It was mainly led by speculators or investors who were left holding the baby when the market stopped 2008, 9, 10. But that backlog seems to be cleared. The problem we have in as I see it in Vietnam is that people have quite short memories. Although they may have had their fingers burnt 2007 and 8, 2009 and 10, the reality is many Vietnamese families still feel that real estate is right up there as the top asset class to own. It used to be land and gold, and now it's probably land and apartments. So
did the move by the government to, at one time you could, so I understand, you could buy an apartment or buy a villa by turning up with a carrier bag full of cash, and now transactions over a certain amount have to go through the bank. Has that made a difference?
Well, the trading floor, I'm sure there are many transactions that are still done in cash, but obviously the nature of that quick trade has probably gone. I think people, if they're buying certainly a condominium now, they want to touch and feel and smell the showroom. They want to see the model. They want to go and look at the work on site. They want to look at the pedigree of the developer. They want to see who the project managers are, who the architect was, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like. Some of the projects are still being sold with bare shells, so you've got to shut one eye and imagine what you will do with the unit when you buy it, when it's finished. But I think that whole consumer protection thing has changed a lot, and the trading floor and just the changing at what point a developer can start to sell the off the plan was a good thing, because it really was lacking, and obviously some developers took the money and moved on to the next project before finishing the first one, so there wasn't that balance that's required, and those developers really paid for it.
Right, and have some of those developers gone to the wall?
I don't think we'll be seeing them in round 2.
Right, okay. Because my impression, I've been in Vietnam for 3.5 years, and I rented apartments until last year when I bought one. And from various people, last October was around about the best time. Prices were not necessarily expected to rise, but they weren't expected to fall very much. And it seemed to me that some of the smaller developers had gone out of business or sold their portfolio, but the people like Keppel and the other similar companies have got such deep pockets elsewhere, they will just ride the storm, because it's only another 6 months or a year. And so that has given a stability. Properties have dropped in price to a given level, and they won't go any lower, but they will start to increase. Is that about?
Well, I think that everyone always talks about the price and location, but I think there's a number of other factors, as you pointed out. One of obviously is the deep pockets, the quality behind the brand, the name, the developer, and the other thing, of course, is payment terms. If you bought back in October last year, I hope you bought 2 apartments.
I'm not allowed to yet, am I?
Maybe one big one. The payment terms that were being offered by some groups in order to get you to sign and put the deposit down were very good. Effectively, they were giving you end user finance without you having to go to the bank. I not only did they chew their way through, hold on. Some groups, Capital for instance, actually started to develop another project in District 7, which, as you know, will be finished very soon, and those units handed over. So I think that the bigger developers, not just the foreign groups, because Nova Land, CT Group, SSG, have all been able to carry on going. And obviously the biggest group, Ving Group, which is about 10 times bigger than the other groups I just mentioned in terms of portfolio and market cap, have carried on, and the projects they've done up in Hanoi are as big as anything that you see in Hong Kong or Singapore. And if you're familiar with the Taikoo Shing development, the Times Square, and Royal City projects are very, very big, very scaled up, and obviously a mixed use as well. So it's definitely a story of have and have not, winners and losers. And as I said, can't put it any more politely or delicately that some groups will not go through to the second round.
Right. And what do you think might change? The current level of business confidence here seems to it came down a couple of years ago and hasn't really increased. In the new year, and by that I mean in January, people are really quite excited by the opportunities for the coming year, and then after TET they're really quite excited, and then nothing seems to happen, and then everybody realises that actually this year is the same as last year. What in the property business, what needs to happen to sort of wake it up?
Well, obviously for the last 2.5 years we've had interest rates coming down, which obviously at some point meant that people found it attractive to borrow for a home loan, and as I said, the affordable market seems to be growing faster for home loans. So if you talk to groups like Nam Long, and many, over 50% of their buyers are interested in taking up a home loan. And then 90% of those buyers, when they on completion, will actually move into the unit themselves. Right. So we take a lot of confidence out of stats like that, and I do think that the slight incremental increases that Capital Land have done at the Vista when they were selling out their final store of units. The fact that some of the developers can take away that end user finance I was talking about a few minutes ago, and others when they launch new projects are now able to slowly move the price up by a few percentage points. We take, after 7 very, very dry years, we take a lot of confidence out of that. The fact that foreign groups are coming back seriously to buy income producing assets, even though they know all the risks, they know often they're buying the tail end of a lease, a land lease, or they're buying into a joint venture which may have been friendly or may have been acrimonious after 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We see that as all good signs. The important thing also that we look at is that if you're sitting in Hong Kong or Singapore or the US or the UK, you're able to invest in practically any market in the world. And so the fact that people want to come back to Vietnam after that awful period of where real estate was declared as toxic, where it was non-productive, where people lost billions of dollars on funds that were value were lost. The fact that they want to come back again.
Was that actual dollars, or was that the theoretical dollars?
I think theoretical dollars.
Okay.
But for many groups, Vietnam is still a dirty word in the real estate industry, and for others, it's an opportunity. Obviously, I don't want to use that word too often because it doesn't pay salaries and it doesn't make profit. But people can see that out there, if a market adjusts by in the office rental market by 50%. In some cases, and in the capital value investment services as apartments are concerned, If the price you bought an apartment for, you probably couldn't buy a car park in Hong Kong or Singapore.
Oh, value for money here is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think people forget that. And particularly, to buy an apartment, 100 meter, 150 meter square meter apartment for a couple of $100,000, it's pretty good value when you look at other markets in Asia. Yes, there are some issues of the tenure and leasehold, but at our age, 50 years is okay.
One of the things I've always thought, because I had property in the UK before I moved out here, and I worked as a PR agency for a real estate company in the UK for a while. One of the things that always surprised me was nobody recognised what I call relativity. Everybody, and I'm going to use GBP, everybody wants to have a £500,000 house, and they all believe that their house is actually worth 500,000. But when they come to sell it, of course, they've got no chance, because actually the real value, i.e. what somebody will pay, is 400. And they beef and complain and complain. But the realisation is, in fact, that if you technically lose £100,000 on your place, it doesn't really matter, because the one you want to buy has also lost £100,000. So, relatively speaking, nothing's changed. It's just perceived value. Do you think that happens here?
I think that so much of the property that was bought 2006 to 2008 was bought by investors who probably started off as speculators, and they bought in a rush as the market was increasing by 20, 30, 40% in 1 year. There were a lot of people that their friend told them, or the taxi driver told them that the price at the top of the market was X, whether it was 500 or 200 or whatever it was, but let's call it X, and then it went down to X divided by 2. But really, what was important, obviously, in that calculation is what price they paid. So yes, if you bought in the spring or the early part of the summer of 2007, you probably bought some of these big developments in District 7 or District 2, you bought at $1,300, $1,400. At the top of the market went to $2,500, $2,800. So it really depends the day you bought, the day you sell. So I think that a lot of people had their nose put out of joint, felt very bad about it. But obviously the market was already beginning to become very, very full by the end of 2007. Sure enough, people are sitting on a big paper loss.
Yeah, but a paper loss.
Yep.
Which is, they have to wake up to that fact.
Yeah, but these markets are very cyclical, and as I said, I think we're seeing prices build up again. Nothing like with the momentum that they were in 2006 and 7, but they certainly are beginning to go forward again. Obviously, you could argue, there's been a huge amount of inflation since then, and there's been the foreign exchange has obviously changed dramatically since the dollar rates changed dramatically. I think we're 7-8 devaluations later. So yeah, a lot of adjustment and a lot of head scratching.
Yeah. But that's the property market.
That's the property market. It's a very risky market, and this is whether you want to be, call it a developing market, an emerging market. Obviously, the big boys in the fund still call it a frontier market.
Would you like to see government intervention?
Well, we've seen calling the market non-productive and toxic, and then with the rules regarding what point you can sell. I think we've had quite a lot of government intervention, maybe too much, and I think there was a lot to learn from other markets. I mean, nothing that's happened in Vietnam is a first. No. It happened all across Asia in '97. It happened in Eastern Europe. It happens all the time. The NPLs certainly are not an issue that only Vietnam has to cope with. So I think there was a lot of rather tepid government intervention, which really, with hindsight, made the situation worse. However, it wasn't done to do that. It was done with the best intention. And hopefully if it happens again, because it will, the government will be, and the various departments that oversee these issues. Don't forget that Hong Kong and Singapore and these other markets overshoot as well. I think we're on to the 7th or 8th bout of stamp duty and changing the rules regarding deposits and who can buy and sell and how much you can borrow from the bank. So this happens all the time. It's work in progress. But obviously the key thing for the government is to provide homes and housing for a larger part of the population. So actually, almost by default, this movement towards affordable housing is a good thing. Is a very good thing, and the people that are doing it and doing it successfully have been and studied other markets in Asia. They've been to look at the Philippines and Thailand and the Klang Valley in Malaysia and seen affordable housing and what's required, and you can actually still make a reasonable margin on it. And of course, all the funds and the investment groups are holding these companies up as darlings of the stock market, and obviously their share price has really adjusted on the back of that. Groups that were trying to sell $1 million homes are now selling $100,000 homes, often on the same land that they had acquired to be putting these big villas on, but now they're realizing that they may not make quite the same margin, but they're making good money, and of course they can sell, whereas they couldn't sell $1 million homes even today.
At least they're getting their money turning over.
Sure, and the shareholders and stakeholders are enjoying the ride. I mean, some of these companies have gone up by 30, 40, as much as 50% this year, since the beginning of the year, their share price, which is, so actually in a funny way, although we're talking about real estate, the people that have really done well this year have been the shareholders.
Right. Some people say that if the government were to allow or relax the rules the same way as Thailand has relaxed the rules, where in Thailand I understand you don't have to live there to own a property. You can go there, live there for a while, buy a property, and then perhaps go back to your hometown or your home country and then visit from time to time. Do you think that would help the market? Do you think that's something that the government is considering? Or?
Well, I think they're considering it, and obviously we've seen various drafts of the foreign ownership rules. It's very, very tricky for the government. The Thai market is much more mature, and obviously there's the repeat customers for Thai Inc. or Thai tourism is huge, and for us in Vietnam it's not. I think it would have a very small impact. However, I would like to see it because I think it evens out the playing field. But do I think it would make a big difference? No, I honestly don't.
Right. But it would lead to less regulation, which is always a good thing.
Yes, but I mean, for example, you were in Vietnam for 3 years before you bought, so it was actually the price that drove you to buy, not the fact that you could or you couldn't, because the 90 days after you came here and you got that little blue card, you could buy.
Actually, that was not the reason. The reason, much more simple, much more commercial. I decided that I'd never paid rent in my life before. I'd always owned my own property, and all of a sudden to come and fork out $1,000+ a month for the pleasure of living here, I thought long term, because I plan to be here long term, that if I bought, then I would have the benefit and not the responsibility of finding $1,000 a month to pay on a property.
And that's an equally good answer, if not a better answer.
Now, do you think there will be further relaxation?
I think there's definitely a security issue which the Vietnamese government is worried about, and you see it in other markets.
Security? Right.
Well, that's the reason that the government...
How do they define security?
I think they well, let me give you an example. In Hong Kong, the prices in certainly the mid-range and the high in the luxury sector have been completely skewed by mainland Chinese buyers, and I think to a certain extent the government is worried that prices would be skewed artificially by foreign groups. So the rules that they're now discussing would be a certain percentage of property in a certain building, in certain buildings, would be allowed to be owned by foreigners, a little bit like in Thailand, probably a bit less. and a certain number of villas in a certain in a ward within a district could be owned by foreigners. But I don't think
but they want to allow people who have
because I think a lot of people that obviously the government listens to has said this would help. But I mean, it's not one thing that's going to turn the market around. No. It's shaking out more land into the private sector, having a more transparent system of tendering and auctioning land, a process of moving it from agricultural land into residential development land, improving the infrastructure. Those are the things that are going to probably have an even bigger effect. It's not just allowing, to be honest, what would be 20,000 foreigners that may or may not stump up and buy. I'm not even sure it would be as much as that.
Because I think that the figures I last read were something like 387.
Well, with you it's 388.
Yes. Yeah. It's something. I mean, it's such a minuscule.
It's certainly under 500.
Yeah. Which doesn't seem to affect the market.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, the building I'm in, I would say it's I think technically high end. Probably 60-70% of the, not only I assume nearly 100% of the owners are Vietnamese, but about 60 to 70% of the residents are Vietnamese.
Right. Yeah. I think a big change in 12 years that I've seen is that in any office building or any residential block, whereas before, if the rent was over $20, $30, $40, then it was almost exclusively the stamping ground of multinationals. Now that's changed, and you go into the better buildings in Ho Chi Minh City, the Kum Ho, Siana Towers, where the Texaco Financial Tower, you go into Sanwa Tower, you go into Vingroup's buildings, you'll find that there's a good proportion of Vietnamese companies are taking up the space, and of course it's exactly the same in the better condominium buildings, in the better subdivisions, in the better villa developments as well.
Because development like that to me doesn't seem like it's slowing down. There are still new buildings going up, and I get bombarded all the time with new great opportunities.
I'm glad that you have such a good visibility on the market.
Right, and I think my last question is going to be, you've been here 13 years?
It'll be 13 years in October, yeah.
Oh, congratulations, happy anniversary. And what do you see yourself doing in the next 5?
I'll be 60 years old in 5 years' time. I have very small children. Our twins are 6, so I would like to, how nice, spend more time with them. And my other 3 children as well. The first one graduates early next year. I don't want to miss...
Is he going to go into the property? He or she going to go into the property market?
I have 5 daughters.
5 daughters? My goodness me. Just think of the wedding cost.
Absolutely. So certainly I don't think I'll be giving up work anytime soon. I just spent the day in Phnom Penh. I would like to see if I can get some of the investors that have been successful in Vietnam, and there are a couple, to move money around Southeast Asia. I'm holding my breath on the Yangon Myanmar story. I hope that CBRE has patient enough with me to keep me on their books for a while. I sit as a non-exec on a big listed development. I enjoyed that job. Yumi and I are building a house. Actually, she's building it, and I'm watching from afar and offering good advice. So life is busy. So I don't think too many changes. But obviously, what we do know after 5 years is that change is ever present in Vietnam, and the ride, although often rocky, is exciting. This year I sit as the chairman of AmCham in Ho Chi Minh City. That's been a great source of meeting a lot of very interesting people as they come through, and putting a little bit of back into the business community on behalf of CBRE, which is a big American company. So I've enjoyed all those things, and so other things like that to keep me busy.
And just going back, your daughter that's going to graduate, would you recommend she goes into real estate?
Well, we had a good discussion about that when she was here. She spent a month with us in the summer, and she did an internship with Coffee Bean, helping them with some strategy, and then she did a day with a developer. So we did actually talk about things. She's doing history at Boston University in the US. So she's definitely not going to be a doctor. So the world is wide open, and maybe real estate is on her agenda.
Well, that would be quite nice to see the family tradition continue.
Well, as I said, with 5 daughters, hopefully one of them will see the light.
Mark, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really interesting, and I think that our viewers will be really pleased to have some real insight into the property market here in Vietnam. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you for viewing this episode of CEO Insights, and thank you very much indeed for your attention and for watching. And my name is Leon Shears, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.